realize that someone has done something so remarkable for you, something that you could not do on your own, something that you needed desperately but had no way of obtaining, at least for most of us, that wells up within a sense of gratitude. And that's probably one of the most difficult things that any of us tries to express. You ever had that situation? Somebody does something very nice for you, something kind. Somebody goes out of their way for you, and you don't know what to do with that. You don't know how to say, thank you. I know we can all say thank you, but we don't know how to say it in such a way that it expresses the gratitude that we're feeling on the inside. By show of hands, how many of you are better at doing for someone else than having someone do for you? Yeah, that's what I thought. I grew up in a family, at least on my dad's side, that was predominantly Dutch. Well, they were all Dutch. And one of the things that I learned in my own family was that they weren't very good at showing emotional warmth. My grandfather's idea of showing us emotional warmth was he would have coffee with us in the morning. Now, his idea of coffee for us was that he would pour it into a little saucer. He'd pour about this much cream into a saucer, and he'd let it cool, and then you have to make noise too. Before the time that we were drinking that coffee, we got to sit on Grandpa's lap. That was his emotional warmth. He still looked very stern. Sometimes he looked very scary. But at that moment, we knew very much he loved us. Didn't tell us that, at least not very often, but we knew. Out of that, we learned that showing that emotional warmth wasn't always the strong suit. However, there are some things with the Dutch that are very well known. Their work ethic, their perseverance, their generosity, their sense of community. Community in the sense that they are very eager to give to one another. And I've served enough congregations with enough Dutch in the background that I've been able to see that generosity at times caused some problems. If there was a need within the congregation, if anyone was there and needed something, I had 20 people that were ready to move in and help them. Usually it was such a riches and abundance that we weren't quite sure what to do with all of it. And in any Reformed church, probably in most any church, actually, if you have a carry-in dinner, is there ever a shortage of food? Never. Never. Now, whenever we would turn that around, I had to spend a lot of time with those who were receiving the grace and the generosity of others. Why? Because they weren't sure how to handle it. I think that we can take care of ourselves. We all want to think that we don't need anyone else. We would like to be needed by everyone else, but we don't want to think that we need anyone else. And so when the tables are turned, when we're on the receiving end, when the need is not going away from us, but toward us, we have a difficult time with generosity or with gratitude, don't we? Usually what I had to tell individuals was, the most difficult but the most simple way of handling that is to say, thank you. And then leave it. Thank you. Simple words. Simple words that expressed our gratitude. But not always simple to carry out. I would say that there's a lot of transference there with our relationship with God. Wouldn't you agree? If God is saying, I would like you to do this for me, you'd say, yes, I'd love to do that for you, God. And then when God says, I'm going to do this for you, we don't know what to do with that. We're not a culture that deals well with gratitude. In fact, I would say that out of the three parts of the Heidelberg, the guilt, the grace, and the gratitude, the guilt, we all understand that one. I already showed you that. The grace, we understand that one too. We've tried and tried and tried, and we can't find our way back to God, and we are so glad that God is there to help. But gratitude, that's difficult. Isn't that funny? The easiest part of the whole doctrine is the most difficult for us to do. To show our gratitude. To show how much what someone else has done has touched our lives. Gratitude, however, overcomes all of our negative emotions. All the things that kind of drag us down. All the things that defeat us. Because if we're honest with ourselves, most of the time other people don't defeat us, we defeat ourselves. And we defeat ourselves because we get caught into this cycle of negative emotions, negative outlooks. Sometimes God provides a really good illustration when I don't have one. Imagine that. Yesterday, unbeknownst to all of you, one of Nancy's colleagues, her mother passed away just over a week ago. She was cremated. Family are not believers. Well, her husband is nominally a Buddhist, kind of. He likes some of the things they do. When her mother passed away, she had no idea how to proceed with that. They didn't want a funeral. They didn't want some kind of a religious service. But they wanted to do something. They felt like there was a gap there. Nancy, on your behalf, offered them the use of our church. They had 20 people that wanted to come together and support each other and encourage each other and just be together to remember. And those are good emotional options for us, even in the Reformed Church, right? We come together to remember. And so they did, yesterday afternoon. They met in the fellowship hall. They were there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours together. No big deal, right? I don't know this woman at all. Nancy does. Nancy says she is a computer tech wizard. That her whole life is around all of the things that are in the computer. Her whole life looks like that as well. It's Ife, and you don't touch Ife. You say things to her. You interact with her, and she does on a very disciplined way. And when Nancy offered her the use of the church, something as simple as that, the gratitude within her, because of all of the emotional strain of losing her mother, overwhelmed her. And all of a sudden, this woman who never touches anyone, who never will be touched, who always keeps that very appropriate professional decorum boundaries, came up to Nancy and threw her arms around her and hugged her and said how thankful she was. And about an hour later came and threw her arms around her and said how thankful she was. And then toward the end of the day threw her arms around her and said, "You have no idea how thankful I am." Like I said, I've only met the woman once. So I really don't know her, except for what Nancy tells me. And so we came to lock up the church yesterday, and they happen to still be here. And I'm getting out of the car, and this woman, and she's not all that big, she's about this tall, comes running up, throws her arms around me, and tells me how thankful she was. I'm going, oh, this must be Ife. Her gratitude